The biggest obstacle is always going to be yourself. It's not going to be what somebody else does to you, what else somebody else says to you. Like all of those things you can't control, right? But what you can control is how you react and what you do and how many times you get back up after you fall down.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. Kate Bryan here for another week and another inspiring story. The One Girl Revolution podcast highlights the stories of everyday women who are changing the world through their lives. Please subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. We're on YouTube at One Girl Revolution, and you can find all of our social media links, podcast episodes, videos, and so much more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. Today, we talk about resilience and the power of women to not only change the trajectory of their own lives, but also to transform the world. No matter what you're going through, no matter what you've been through and what you've overcome, or what you're going to go through in the future, you have the power to change the world. Today's guest on the One Girl Revolution podcast is Raelynn Batdorff. Raelynn is a survivor. She's an entrepreneur. She's a mama. She's a wife, a CrossFit powerhouse, and so much more. I got connected to Raelynn through our friend, Abby Steffel, who was on the podcast. And when she told me about Raelynn and her story, I knew that I had to have her on the podcast. Raelynn suffered a great deal of abuse and trauma as a child, but she overcame it all to be the incredible woman she is today. She joins the One Girl Revolution podcast to share her story, her wisdom. She's overcome so much and she has so much to share. How she drew boundaries with family members. We talk about the incredible entrepreneurial efforts, her volunteer efforts, including being a foster dog mom, and so much more. This episode will touch your heart and soul, so please listen to and share Raelynn's incredible story of resilience, life, and love. Without further ado, here's Raelynn. Raelynn, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so excited to be connected to a fellow Michigander, a Michigan girl, to share your story and all about the incredible things that you've been through, things that you're going through, and just all the incredible work that you do. I know that our mutual friend, Abby, put us in touch, and she just had the most beautiful things to say about you. And then even just going back and forth with you via email, I'm just so excited for you to share your story and just some of the things that you've been through. And I know that it's going to be such an inspiration to all of our listeners.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Abby can listen to her story like all day long. So I'm not sure like the expectation I'll live up to it as far, but I'm totally humbled to be here and to have the invite. So I'm happy to share my story and inspire those. So ask away.
And you and Abby know each other from CrossFit, I'm imagining.
Yes. Yep. So Abby and I met at Granite Games. We were competing in the same age division, and that's how we connected. And then we've competed together on the same team. And then, of course, she came to Michigan for my wedding and did my photos for me. So very blessed to have Abby as a friend.
She's so amazing. And our girl was just on American Ninja Warrior. So anybody who is listening, go back and check it out. She's such an inspiration. And her family, I love Molly, and her entire family is such an inspiration to the world too. So encouraging people to carve out courage.
Yeah, absolutely. She has a really good lens for life to look through, and she passes that on to her kids really well as well. So she's definitely that type of person you want in your circle, because she helps you really challenge kind of like that lens you look through and how you perceive life and just like those around you even.
Raelynn, well, I want to ask you all about your own life journey. But before we get into that, I want to know, who is a One Girl Revolution? Who is a woman or girl that's inspired you in your own life?
Yeah, so that definitely would have been or is my grandma. I say was just because she did pass away back in 2009. So that was, a hard loss, but she is definitely the most pivotal thing that I had in my life, especially as a female. So I had an absence of like a strong mother figure, which I'm sure we may touch on, but she really kind of stepped in to kind of make me believe in myself at those times in life I didn't have that guidance from like a strong mom in my life.
So this podcast is all about evolution, the evolution of women. And I know that things that we've been through or things that we're going through, they all turn us into the woman that we were created to be. And I'd love to hear from you just a little bit about your backstory. So if we could rewind to your early life, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about who you are and where you're from and just a little bit about your life journey.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a very small town. So you're in Michigan, maybe. I know you're in like Detroit area, but like think of like mom and pop IGA and like a one blinking light and a one gas station. That's kind of where I grew up. It's near Alpena. So I grew up there and kind of uh the situation is my parents were divorced from an early age, like very early on, and my mom had custody of me. Um, my mom was addicted to alcohol and drugs. Growing up, it was pretty hard because she would use that a lot to kind of make me believe things that were untrue. So, like I was told in an early age, my dad would be harmful to me. I remember one time, my school was actually right across kind of the street from me. I was a walker, just walked to school and back. My dad showed up to have lunch with me, and my mom had me so fearfully ingrained that he was going to kidnap me and take me away that I actually ran. Like I left school and like booked at home. She kind of just always built fear in me, and it was for her own comfort, right? So she wanted me never to leave her side. She needed me to be there. She was searching for something else, and that was cast onto me by creating fear. So I kind of grew up in a state of fear, and I grew up in a small town, and there was no really way out at a point. So a lot of things I was faced with early on was, what am I going to do with my life? Am I going to be here forever? Will I even live to make it to a certain age? Because there was times when you get in a car as a child with a mom who's an alcoholic, it's very scary. There's times I had to drive with her when she was drunk, and I knew she was drunk, and I would plead to her and I would say, like, please don't make me get in the car. And, you know, while you do have that chance, you're a child, 8, 9 years old at one specific instance, like, it's hard to speak up against that. You know, I have a scar on my leg. I was actually just talking about yesterday with my husband from a car accident. I was in an early age with her, and it was that moment where, you know, I knew she had drank too much. I didn't want to get in the car, and my gut told me don't do it, but I felt like I had to respect my mother and get in the car, and I did. And, you know, we ended up crashing, and my knee was gashed all open, have stitches and a scar, but that scar constantly reminds me that I'm not there. I'm not in that place anymore. I could have been. Something worse could have happened, but you know, I've been lucky to have been given many second chances, and that was just one of them. So growing up with small town, divorced parents, I guess, you know, as far as like other items in my life, then I moved out when I was 16 because I think that I didn't have a chance to develop a relationship with my dad because of that kind of initial fear. I think his relationship was very broken with my mom too. So he was dealing with a lot of stuff. So he didn't always perceive females as like, you know, a comfortable person to have in his life either. So we didn't have the best relationship. So I got a place of my own when I was 16. And when I turned 17 and graduated, I got out of Michigan and went to Texas. So that's kind of the highlight of who I was and where I came from.
Yeah. And thinking about your childhood, it's so difficult for children in that situation because they don't have a choice. Like you didn't have a choice that you could just not get in the car when your mom was telling you to. You know, sometimes there are options. Oh, you could call a family member. And I think that's a lot of times in all of our lives, even as an adult, you know, we actually have choices to not spend time with people. You think about abusive relationships or familial relationships where people are abusive verbally, physically, all of those different things. But a lot of times, even as adults, we feel like we don't have the ability to leave or we don't have the ability to put up those boundaries. And so I think that it's so important for you to share your story as a kid going through that. And I can't even imagine what that experience was like. And the trauma that you've overcome from that. But also it's important for all of us to think about our own lives. You know, where are places that we can put up boundaries? And I know that you did that with your mom.
Yeah, it's not easy, you know, like there's so many feelings that come in it, right? Like I haven't been, you know, in a relationship as far as like boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband, wife, where I've had that type of abuse. But as a child, it's kind of the same thing. I need a home, right? I need that basic, like I need safety. If I walk away, where do I go sleep tonight? And then also shame, right? If I do, I'm going to create noise. People are going to notice that I'm not normal, and like I'm not like other families, or I'm not like other couples, or whatever it is. And it's just the sense of safety, and like also wanting to resist that shame. Like it kind of creates a state of fear, which just really makes you kind of maybe not always make the best choices. So the thing that changed for me and all of that was becoming pregnant with my daughter, Megan. So won't cry about this one, but it was the last time I talked to my mom. I found out I was pregnant with Megan, and that kind of was really pivotal in my life, because it made me reflect inward and say, like, I am going to be a mom now. What do I want for this child? Because I can't control what happened to me, but I can control what's going to happen in her life. And when I was 16 weeks pregnant, my mom just, again, had went on with her 2 a.m. calling me drunk thing. And so I had went up north, and I sat down and I told her, unless you get help, like, you will never get to know this baby. And I just drew the line there. And to this day, she's never gotten help. She's never tried to reach out to me in any way to fix that. And she's never met my children. And the last day I saw her was that conversation in 2003.
Yeah. It's so difficult and so painful to go through that, especially when it's your mother. She should be walking with you through these very pivotal points in life. But I think that your story also reflects the power that women have to change the cycle. You've changed the cycle for your kids, and that's going to change the cycle for your grandchildren. And the power that we have, we don't have to become the sum of everything that we were raised with, or the sum of the family that we grew up in, or the sum of the zip code that we grew up in. There are all these different facets that are a piece of our story, a part of our journey, but you're a perfect example of that. You can rise above it and become the person that you were truly created to be.
Yeah, and the biggest obstacle is always going to be yourself. It's not going to be what somebody else does to you, what else somebody else says to you. Like, all of those things you can't control, right? But what you can control is how you react, and what you do, and how many times you get back up after you fall down. And I just refuse to stay down. So, and it's like, I look back early on, and I remember a time where my mom had a super unhealthy relationship with my stepmom, jealousy or whatnot. And I never got those luxury items as a kid. And growing up in the 80s, like, getting a perm was like, woo. So my stepmom was a licensed beautician. So she gave me an at-home perm on one of the weekends that I did go with my dad. And I didn't ask my mom for permission. I came back, and my mom was so upset. She turned on the water in the tub as hot as she could, because she knew that heat would try to take the perm out. And I had blisters on my head for weeks to come after that, because she was so angry that I allowed my stepmom to give me a perm. And she tried to use that hot water that was literally boiling, like, at that point, to take the perm out. And I just remember she also blew dry me and straight into after. She was so angry. I just could not, that always came back to me when I brushed my daughter's hair, just how beautiful she was. And I was like, I just, it really didn't, like, I hate to say validated the choice I made, but I know as I walk through life that, yeah, it's hard. Mother's Day comes along, and, social media will put those things in front of you. World's best mom today. Like, I'm so happy for those people who have that. But for those of us who don't, it's not a matter of shame, right? It's a matter of strength. Like, what have we had to overcome, and how are we using that to make ourselves better, not just for us, but for, like, our own daughters, our own kids, people around us, like this podcast. Like, these are ways we can join together and be stronger. So when I brush her hair, it's a reminder of strength and overcoming. And that's what I want her to know when she faces her own demons. And they're not going to be the same as mine, but we all have them.
And you've become the mother probably that you needed, and you might even be a better mother because of your own experience. I know that friends and family members that have gone through abuse in their lives, they talk about that. If they didn't have a good relationship with their mothers, they kind of took ownership of their own life and their own motherhood. And they said, I'm going to be a better woman. I'm going to be a better mother. And this is a shout out also to so many women out in the world. I have so many friends that have struggled with infertility, or, weren't able to have kids, but some of the quote unquote mother figures are more mothers to all of us, or even friendships, sister friends, any of our girlfriends, they can kind of fill that void that some people feel not having a mother. And I think we need to shout out on Mother's Day, as much as we want to give shout outs to mothers, it's also these amazing women that we're surrounded with.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I agree. And again, it just goes back to it is what you make it. And I'm not saying like we all should have sober moments that we reflect and let the pain hurt, right? There's going to be times we just need to allow it in. But like at the same point, like the perspective we take on things is really important. Like it goes back to like we can control what we can control, and mindset is going to be part of that. And so I just wanted to control the healthiest mindset about Mother's Day that I can, right? And it doesn't mean I'm going to block the feelings, but I'll also be very self-aware of how I'm reacting to it and not view it, like you said, how can I view this as also like using it as a day to really recognize those other outstanding females in my life. It's not just specific to maybe motherhood.
Well, and drawing boundaries, that's another thing that's really important to me about your story is I know it took a lot of courage for you to say to your mom, I'm not going to have a relationship with you until you get help. And it's so important for us to draw those boundaries. And thinking about friendships, family relationships, it can be so tempting to be like, well, we'll just give them one more chance, or maybe they didn't mean it, and for our own mental health, I love that people are talking about mental health more than ever and healthy relationships, that there can be so much manipulation. Some of the things that you were sharing about your mom, where it's like manipulation and these mind games, and then obviously physical abuse, but sometimes it's that emotional abuse too, that we need to protect ourselves with, and boundaries are healthy and we need to draw those to protect us and to protect our families and our mental health.
Yeah, you just don't want to be a victim to somebody else's own brokenness, right? Like those pieces that they are still like working and they're their demons, they can't become your own. And that doesn't mean like you can, like if someone means enough to you, you don't tell them they're too much, right? Because we all have that. None of us are perfect. But it's a recognize to say like, here's how I can help in the ways and the capacities, but like this is that boundary where now, yes, that is too much. Like it is affecting my own mental, emotional health. And not only that, it's affecting my families and my kids and so on. So, it's okay. We're not super women. We're not put on this earth to bear the weight of everybody else's burdens. But I think somehow that's like the perception, right? That like we are the women, we are the, center of the family. We should take this is my mother. I should have respect. Like it is my blood. Like people will say that, like, how do you do that to your own blood? It's like, it's not just about that. You have to look at it with a wider lens of like, yes, I am grateful that my mom gave birth to me, and that part of my heart will always be thankful for that. But like, I am not bound to be a victim of her abuse because of her own demons. And she has the choice, just like I had the choice to remove myself from that situation. She has the choice to improve her situation and make herself better. And I'm not saying that disease is an easy cure, but like all I was asking, and I even said to her early on, was a step. Like take a step towards this, show me something, and there's been nothing. So what you do when someone takes a step is your choice. But I mean, I never even got to answer that question because she just never even took it. And I know that if I would have seen effort, I would have had encouragement for her. So.
And you have a relationship with your dad now, right? How did you move? I'm so curious. How did you move from your upbringing where you were kind of scared, afraid of what was to come if you and your dad had a relationship? How did you guys work together on getting close again?
Yeah, so that definitely has taken time. I think that both of us are very stubborn, kind of headed individuals. And so we're more alike than different, which is scary in ways. But now that I'm older, like 40, I didn't really mention that I'm 40 now, I can kind of see that. I think moving away to Texas was critical. I think I needed space. I needed self-discovery. I just needed to get out. And not feel shame. I felt a lot of shame. Like I didn't live up to everyone's expectations. I wasn't, doing everything I should be doing. So giving myself time to just like do that. And then giving my dad time to maybe settle into maybe I wasn't going to be who he thought I was going to be. Even when I started doing CrossFit, I remember questions and if my dad hears this, I love you, Dad. But he'd say like, how much bigger are you going to let your muscles get? Like, you know what I mean? Always kind of just a little skeptical of like the things I was doing. I got a degree in early childhood. I quit teaching to start my own entrepreneur business. He's like, and why are you doing that? And how safe is that choice right now? You didn't even go to school for business. So it's just like, he's always kind of been like, take the safe choice. And I'm kind of like, I'm breaking all the rules, Dad. Like, stop telling me, you know? So I think as we got older and he settled into, oh, that's Raelynn, she's just going to do what she wants. And I settled into, listen, my dad loves me and he has his own story. And I need to kind of recognize too those parts about him and like give him grace. Like he hasn't had it easy either. So just like that mutual understanding, I'd say that after he became a grandfather and I had the kids, we definitely were more wanting to work on things. So
tell me about your family life now, because I know you have a relationship with your dad, but you're also married, you have a couple of kids. Tell me about your life now.
Yep. So right now I have a daughter who's 16 and a son who is 13. And then I'm remarried. I've been divorced once. And my husband has a daughter, Brianna, who's 21. And then we have 3 dogs. And then we also foster dogs through Pet Rescue here in Michigan, out of like Grand Rapids area. So that's kind of the dynamics now. Lots of kid stuff, teenage stuff these years. Awesome husband, love him so much. And then lots of dogs.
I want to talk about all the different facets of your life, because one thing that I'm so touched by your life is you just have embraced so many different things. And you've really, in my mind, from what you shared with me via email, you've dedicated your life to serving others, whether it be through, CrossFit and then the gym and then your entrepreneurial efforts. Entrepreneurial is a hard word for Michigan people. So I'd love to talk about, and being a foster dog mom, I want to talk about all the different things. So I guess let's start with your entrepreneurial efforts. I know you have a couple of businesses, you're doing a lot of different things. Can you share some about that?
Yeah, sure. So crazy that you say that. I never really guess I've done that reflection, like about me to be like, oh, wow, I kind of just do those type. I wanted to go into early childhood for at-risk youth. That was initial. So that's right when I moved to Texas. What I was doing was to go to college to get my degree in early childhood and work with at-risk youth so that I could help them, because I knew what it was like to be in that position where you could not get in the car, right? Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to let them learn how to have that voice. It wasn't about ABCs and 1, 2, 3s to me. It was more about helping those little kids. And then what happened is I got pregnant, I was teaching, and I realized I'm going to be teaching a lot and having a baby. And I was really kind of motivated to see if there was like another way I could stay at home with my child. And so Megan was born and she was 4 months old. She was nursing because I breastfed her. And my grandma, who I mentioned, obviously was very pivotal in my life, had given me a locket, and she yanked on that, her little 4 months hand, and the locket fell into the couch. And of course I'm like, it's like the last thing I have. And I'm like looking and couldn't find it. So I was like, I need to create like this unbreakable jewelry that like the child can play with while they're nursing. And I'm not going to freak out that she's going to break my jewelry anymore. And so that was where the entrepreneurial started, with a company called Mommy Necklaces, which I did for almost a decade. And that was a great time. I've learned so much in that process. You got to imagine, I had Megan when I was 23. I had a degree in early childhood. I had no business background. So yeah. I learned a lot. But I employed work-at-home moms. It was great back in the day. You do those half-off websites. So we would have big initiatives where we would literally create like 3,000 necklaces at once. And it was a fun time. It was good. It also was a really hard time where I learned that I invested a lot into just that thing. And I didn't even realize. I was just like, go, 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 do. And I didn't realize at what cost I was doing that. So at that time, my relationship with my ex, like I thought was healthy, really wasn't that healthy, because I was too busy doing other things. And so was he, to recognize our relationship was paying the price. Kind of came to that and decided to sell Mommy Necklaces in 2013. Just kind of realized I wasn't the person for it anywhere and got it where it was meant to be, and sold it to a beater. That's what we called the people who did our jewelry. So beater. And then at that time, my friend, her husband's passed away. And we started running as a therapy type mechanism. She had 5 kids and they were high school sweethearts. And you can imagine it's just hard for anyone to go through that. But it was one of those things like, get your robe off, let's go for a run and put some life back in you. And we were overtraining a little too much with that. So we found CrossFit. And I'm sure this is that enter my story where CrossFit comes in. And then, so gym owner, and then coach, and then athlete, and all those type of things pivoted from there. And then that stemmed to where I am now, which is actually working in software for the fitness industry. So
your story is just proof that you don't have to die to have many lives. And I think that's so many women, right? We start, and I love your story about mommy necklaces, because if you have an idea, try it. Most people don't have a business background, especially, stay-at-home moms. It's just like they have a good idea and run with it, and you never know where it will lead you to. But then even like our friendships, how it can lead you to then get into fitness and lead you to CrossFit. And now this whole community, that's what I love so much about Abby. And I know so many of your friends, it's really, CrossFit has built this community that all of us need. And especially looking over the past year with COVID, we all craved that so desperately. And, fitness circles were just an opportunity for people really to have community. And of course, stay healthy during, when people were getting the COVID-19, if you were staying healthy, and working out, it was keeping you sane mentally, physically, all those things.
Yeah, you look at those things, you're like, okay, so that had to happen. There's like this whole like logical sequence of events that had to happen for me to like meet Abby, which now this is why I'm here, because Abby mentioned. So it is, you look back, and that's kind of that great retrospective on life you could start to have as you get a little older and wiser. And that's why you're more like, okay, I'll let that thing happen because a greater thing is going to come, right? I love that we can kind of settle into that. But CrossFit has been such an amazing piece of my life. I can't imagine where I'd be without it. And a lot of that isn't just because like physically, like I feel great, but like also just the friendships that I've made. And then also, honestly, some of the things you have to work through as you do CrossFit, failures and a lot of emotions with that, and even gym owner and what that was like. It also forces you to have to, again, stand back up after you fall down again, which, yeah.
And you guys ended up selling the gym, right?
Yeah. So just this past October, and, it kind of was the perfect storm of events for us. I had a surgery in January. COVID kind of hit in that February, March-ish, and we pivoted, virtual classes and tried to do all of that. At the same time, I took on a full-time role for a software company. So it was kind of like, we're doing online classes and I'm full-time in software. And it was like literally like 4 a.m. to like 8 p.m. nonstop. And I just knew at that point, being a gym owner, I wasn't being the best and giving our full effort like we could. And the same to my husband, who was working full-time as well. So our actually massage therapist, the gym from us. So.
Cool. And you guys are still involved in all of that?
Yes, very much. Almost there on the daily. So very still active in fitness, and, some levels it's not the same, some it is, but we're definitely there to support the gym and still part of that CrossFit community and just fitness industry as a whole.
Yeah. And those are important stories for people to think about too, because you have to be open. I think if 2020 taught all of us anything, is nothing is promised, right? And you have to be willing to pivot and change. And there were so many transformations that happened last year in so many people's lives, I think in different ways, some personally, and then professionally, and people were pivoting. And I think we're still going to see that a lot over the coming years, but you have to be, passionate about whatever you're doing, but also be open to whatever chapter is coming next. And that is your entire life story, all the different things that you've done and how you've pivoted and how a door opened and you just jumped. And I can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you. That's funny because I actually, somebody asked me that question the other day, like, well, where do you see yourself in like 3 years from now? And I'm like, I've learned not to try to control that anymore. Like, nope. I mean, do I have goals? Yes, I have goals. They're high level goals. But at the same point, I just want to continually always be open to whatever opportunity comes next, whatever door opens. Like, just maybe it's from that state of fear I was initially raised in. I don't want that state of fear to ever exist in me. I don't ever feel like, as much as I love my current job right now, I don't want to ever feel like I can't leave it if I become unhappy, or, you just can't change something. So 3 years, yes, I have goals, but like, I don't sit there and like have this, like, I'm bound to these things and they better happen. I'm more like, oh, let's see, we'll just go with it.
Another thing that I want people to take away from your story, just some of the stories that you shared with me via email, was obviously you're a foster dog mom. And so you're just so present to the things that are going on in your own community, which really touched my heart in a special way. And I know you shared a story about how last year you had to move home, so away from your family, to take care of your grandpa. So you didn't have to go into a nursing home. And I think those kind of stories are so important for all of us. It's like the normal things that are happening in our own families or in our own communities. And sometimes I know that's a big thing to take a month to go and help your grandpa. But such a selfless act. And I was really touched by that element of your life story, where I feel like you're so present to the things that are going on around you, and you make sacrifices for other people, including the foster dogs.
Oh man, we've had some fun ones. Well, my grandpa unfortunately had, he got dementia and his health was declining. And like at that time, like you just heard about the nursing homes and the outbreaks of COVID, and the amount of deaths that were kind of occurring and were COVID attributed, and all of that was just like scary. Like, we didn't want to put him in, because not only was his risk increased being in there at that time, but then also we would not be able to visit him, right? So, and when you're getting dementia, like that's even harder, So, yeah, I mean, I was the only one really available at that time. And so I moved up north to take care of my grandpa for a month. And his mom's like, here's the mom girl, or the mom guilt, I meant to say. The mom guilt here is that we play out summer with our kids, right? Like, oh, July, we're going to go to the water park. We're going to go to the beach. We have a bucket list. And so like, it was very easy for that month to be like, I'm not at home, right? And I'm not doing these things. And what are my kids? Are they okay? Like, it is hard to do that. But I guarantee now that I've been through that last summer, like what I've showed my kids as far as what family is a priority is more important than that trip to the beach was, right? Mm-hmm. So like, we still are getting our trips to the beach, but like, you have to be able to also step up and model those things when it's important. And my grandma's not here anymore, and she did a lot for me, and this is the way that I was able to repay some for her. And do I wish I could do more? I do. Like, but at that time, at that moment, I could, and so that's why I did it.
Yeah. And that's an important distinction. Sometimes we can, sometimes you can't. Sometimes if you have a bunch of kids at home, little kids, you can't just pick up and leave and say bye to your husband, like, peace out. But your kids are older. And so it's easier, I'm sure, to make those kinds of sacrifices. But it's so important for us to look for opportunities like that when we can do kind things or support others, or pay it forward or pay it backwards, like you shared about your grandmother, like people that have done so much for us. It can make such a huge impact.
Yeah, I think like when you said like that the things I do or whatever touched you for the community, I'm like, oh gosh, I don't really do that much. I think the thing is that I do say no, but I say yes too, right? But I don't just like blanket, like say like, I'm too overwhelmed, I can't do any of these things. Mm-hmm. And I'm not always a yeser either. Like, you have to be able to evaluate exactly what you said. Where am I at in this season in my life, right? What are my kids doing? What's my stress level at work? Like, all these things are going to come into play. And then like having that awareness to know, like, yes, I can take on more foster puppies right now. Yes, I can go up to Alpena to take care of my grandpa for a month, or no, I can't. Like, it's okay to say no too. And I'm not saying I'm a yes person. I'm not a no person. I just, again, it's having that awareness of like, And sometimes I fail and I say yes when I should have said no, and I say no when I should have said yes. So again, not perfect, but
I'm learning how to say no in a new way recently, because I felt like for so long, especially coming out of COVID, you want to just say yes to everything. So if somebody wants to do something, they want to go to dinner, they want you to help with this thing, it's so tempting just to say yes, because we know what it felt like to not be able to do anything. But it's really training yourself to have that self-awareness to say, what can you do, and what do you actually need to be there for? What are the things that only you can do? Sometimes there are situations where other people can do things, and so really being able to just discern that is important.
yeah, I'll say that the one thing I just do continually always advocate for women, you can probably guess, will be like personal, like well-being related to whether that's mental, emotional, physical, right? But physical, like as far as having a fitness outlet, is so critical because it relieves so much stress. It produces so many endorphins, and like also like the more you're moving and feel good about yourself, the more that you like are that ray of sunshine to others. If you feel doom and gloomy, you're going to be kind of doom and gloomy to others, right? Or you're going to fake it and it's going to catch up with you. So I am one of those people that while prioritizing things is always kind of you kind of evaluate at the time. I do think there was those few things, and I always encourage women to like make yourself a priority for, a little bit each day, whether that's a book or whatever you're doing, but then also like finding a physical outlet, like getting out there and moving, because it's so important, and modeling that for your kids, that your health is an important thing is important as well.
One other thing that I wanted to ask you about is your daughter has alopecia, and I know that's another connector to Abby and Molly. People that have listened to the podcast know about Molly's story, and I'd love to hear just your own journey with alopecia, how you found out that your daughter had it, and just her own experience, and kind of through your eyes, that experience.
Yeah, so that was crazy. Or I should say that Abby and I didn't know Molly even was having that happening, and Abby didn't know about Megan. We just kind of really hadn't shared it. And then like one night in the hotel room before like competition day, where she was like opening up about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, Megan has alopecia too. Or I said it vice versa, but we were like, it was crazy to connect that way. So Megan was 18 months old when she woke up one morning, and I noticed like half her hair on one side was missing. And you start to think like, did she sleep on it weird? Because baby gets like you with the cradle, where they sleep and rub one bald spot, but it happened overnight. So I kind of knew like this is something different. Took her to the doctor, and they said that she has, alopecia. Now she has the form that's just kind of right, now is happening just in areas. But her whole life, she dealt with large areas of baldness. And the hardest part is for her was going to like summer camps or going in a pool or a lake, because when that happens, she has no way to really hide her bald spots. And she has like a dark brown hair, and she has, really white scalp, obviously. So those areas of contrast when you get in water or something that mats down the hair were really noticeable. And she was teased, and people would make fun of her. And it was something, that was her battle. Like, and I'm there to, of course, teach her how to be strong through it and what it really means and bring her back down. But I'm really proud of how she has dealt with that. And, she's 16 now, and she's learned not to place her value in her hair, in her appearance. And she's going through a good stage right now. I think she just has a couple areas of bald spots right now, so most of them are hidden, but she's went through times where she can't, and she's just going to have accept what it is. And I think if anything, it's also proven who she wants to surround herself with, because those people that are her real friends, and always be her advocate when like someone teases or brings it up, like those are the people she knows. These are my people, like I can count on. And those other people, I'm happy to talk about it if you want, but I'm not going to let it get me down. And that makes me definitely the most proud of her.
That's amazing. And it's so important for us to raise awareness about alopecia and so many other things. And especially for kids, I think a lot of times kids, they don't see any differences. But then when one kid recognizes it, it's all how kids are raised. You know, if they're raised to see like a difference as something beautiful or unique, or, you know, just a struggle that they have to go through. When I was young, I had terrible eczema, and so I used to like itch my hair out. And most of the times kids were just kind of oblivious, but then you'd get one mean girl that would make a comment, and then all the other kids would be like, oh, this girl is different. And then but we need to train young people, and I think that's so important for Megan and Molly and, you know, all these different people, whatever they're going through, to be able to share about it and be able to talk about it. And it will just help, it'll help other kids, whatever they're going through. And it trains parents. I'm sure that you've had experiences too, where it's like, you got to call a parent up and be like, hey, your kid is making commentary or whatever. It's just it's a complicated thing, but I like that social media is opening up outlets for people to talk about alopecia and eczema and whatever else that people have going on, which is great.
Yeah, for sure. I just, again, it's a piece of us. It doesn't define us. It doesn't define Megan, it doesn't define Molly. It is who they are and what they are. As far as like what they have to deal with, I view it as such an opportunity for us all to grow from each other, and like the girls to really develop strength. That if anything, when I like look at Molly and all, she's doing now, I'm just so proud of her, and Abby's done such a great job like raising her, that it's just beautiful how they speak to the world, and there's touching so many lives. And yeah, I feel like it, and that's why, in my opinion, that certain things get put on certain people's shoulders, because they're the person that I believe, like, the world knew that this was for your shoulders because you're going to do an amazing thing with it. And that's exactly why I believe Molly, goes through what she does, and Megan goes through what she does, and we all have our things.
So true. Raelynn, if you could get to the heart of everything that you do, like I said, there are so many different parts of your story and things that you've done throughout the years and things that you're still doing, where you're helping other people and just spreading kindness and doing good and empowering other people around you. If you could get to the root of why you do what you do, and maybe it's connected to your story growing up and things you've been through, but what is that root? What's at the root of why you do what you do?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is like so innately now. I think I always have said like fall down 7, stand up 8. Like, and I know that sounds kind of like silly and redundant, but it's the same. Like, I think the root of it is that we are blessed to be here each day. And, right now, as I know, there's no critical diagnosis in my life. And, we're reminded with stories and other people around us that have gone too soon. There are people who can't control things that have happened to them. And, my things aren't that bad. They're not that big. And just keeping a really healthy perspective and balance on life, that like there's always tomorrow, and great things are still going to come. And, there's great memories from the past, and sure, there's things I've changed, but ultimately, like, I am just looking forward to the future, and I'm going to fall down again, but I plan on standing back up again. And it's just kind of the root of it is that I don't like to lay down too long. So
I'm curious, because you've been through so much, you've probably had so many different experiences professionally, personally, and which have led you to where you are today. What's the best advice that you've ever gotten? Is there like advice that you've gotten through the years that just kind of has resonated with you and has stayed with you, or a motto that you kind of carry with you?
yeah, I would have to say that again. And I think, bringing back Abby and Molly, I think Molly actually said this on one of her Ninja Warrior interviews. And I was like, yes, Molly, that is my motto. That's my mantra too, where it's like, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to it. That I'm definitely in line with that. Like, as women, we want to control things because we want to make things perfect. Letting go that there really is not a perfect, and letting go that we really can't control everything, and just being like, this is going to happen, right? But now I get to control how I react to it. That has always helped me through all my setbacks. So.
I know that we don't want to talk about where are you going to be in 5 or 10 years, because I don't want to limit your future, because there's so many, I feel like so many amazing things are going to happen in your future. And your journey has already been such a roller coaster, a great roller coaster, a really fun one, I'm sure, in a lot of ways. So I don't want to limit it, but
what's next for you? What's on the horizon? Do you have any competitions coming up or things that you kind of have in your immediate periphery?
So I've picked back up a little bit of competing in CrossFit again, just dabbling in there. I had a few surgeries, so those kind of set me back. And we all know how COVID went. So, but yeah, so CrossFit, few competitions. We'll see where that goes. I'm not sure how my body will react to that increased training level. Since my surgeries, I had a lumbar surgery, and I've also had cervical. So I'm mostly concerned about my spine health, and we'll see how it reacts to some of that. I've also picked up High Rocks training, which is HYROX. It's really kind of a fun event. You can do any of them. Like, they're actually around the world, but in the US and major cities, it's like a 90-minute grinder of running and sled pushing. But it's
cool.
it's no like CrossFit. They think barbell and gymnastics. High Rocks doesn't have any gymnastics or barbells, so it's more just grunt work, right? Like, I'm gonna run, and then I'm gonna do walking lunges, and that really sucks. And then I'm gonna run again, and now I'm gonna push a sled, and that really sucked. So, but it's fun because when you're done, you're like, yes, I did it. So check one of those out, even if you're not like a huge CrossFitter. It's a good competition. And then as far as other outside of that, I just want to be present. And I think that's all we all really want, right? So to continue to live for today, enjoy my daughter's in her senior year, my son's heading into high school, enjoying my time with my husband and my puppies, and just like, just taking time to reflect and slow down when I can and when I need to.
Raelynn, I'll ask you this via email, and I'll make sure to put this in the show notes so if people want to keep track of where you are and what you're doing. But where can people follow your continued journey? Are you on social media? Is there a website or anything that people can do to get in touch with you or stay in touch with your journey?
Oh goodness. So I got rid of Instagram a while back because I was like going through that whole, like, I need to prioritize, like, right. And then I was like, what is area I could probably, but I'm on Facebook. You can find me there. It sounds kind of like old school. My daughter's like, your Facebook? Like, it's so like old school. You can follow me on there. So that awesome. I do have a follow status. So
cool. Well, I will be sure to put that in the show notes. And Raelynn, before I let you go, I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
To just believe in yourself, that it's not about others believing in you at the end of the day. Like, I believe that you have to have self-love, and once you have that self-love, that it will just flow out from every piece of you into others in confidence. Just know that you are who you are and be proud of that, and then be self-reflective enough to know when you can do better or be better, not just for yourself, but for others too. At the end of the day, when you lay your head down, just believe you can, and you will.
Raelynn, you are such an inspiration, and I'm so grateful to have had you on the podcast. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.